Hello and welcome to the webinar on the Irish sailing passport system, which is called Checklick. And I wanted to start off just by introducing myself. My name is Dominic and I work for Checklick. And I wanted to thank you for having me here. I'll start by giving you a little bit of my background. I started off creating this system with someone else when I was working for a sailing club. So what you see here today is kind of a result of what we put together from some really grassroots beginnings, because it's something that when we looked at our own sailing club, we decided that there were some deficiencies in the way that we were running it. So we decided to build an internal system, and then it blossomed into a little bit more of that. So for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the functionality of the system. My goal is to, at the end of this webinar, for you to be very comfortable with the system and to have something as a reference point to look back on if you are having trouble with the system, and I'll provide you with some resources that you can go to if you do need help. So going directly into what we're going to cover today, we'll start by creating a training center. Then we'll go through how to actually license the Irish sailing programs for your training center. Then we'll jump into what the system looks like from a manager account functionality. So we'll go through the various ways and how you can add people into the system. And by people, we're referring to the sailors in your programs, but also any of the instructors or evaluators as we reference them in Checklick. We'll go through the communication features in the system, how you can email and call people. We'll go through viewing participant counts. And that will be vital because that will be part of how you actually bill people, or I'm sorry, how Irish Sailing actually bills people, and you'll be able to see the count of what Irish Sailing bills you. We'll go through the help resources, and then after that we'll jump into the instructor account functionality, because that's kind of the meat of the system, and where a lot of coaches will be using this system. And that is where you can jump in and evaluate people, so you can tick off various skills, you can evaluate groups of people, and then following that you'll be able to send out the progress, whether it's to one person or multiple people. Finally, we'll jump into what the individual sailor sees, or the parent, and that's just depending on who creates the account for that person. And then we'll go through a Q&A. So let's start by jumping in on the login page. So as you can see here, this is the login page for the Irish Sailing Passport. You can see that there's three different text boxes here. The top one here is where you enter your username and password, and again, everybody logs in through here, whether you're a training center manager, or you are a coach or instructor, or if you need to register yourself for a passport, or if you want to create a training center, because I know some of you will be starting from scratch here. So we'll actually go through the process of creating a training center. Let's start by doing that. Okay, so we'll fill in the information.
We'll select the birth date, and we'll choose the username Slumber Day, and we'll use the same password.
Okay, now that we're logged in, I wanted to show you the different ways in which you can add people into the system. If we go back to the page where we went to start, which is irishsailing.checklick.com, you'll notice that down over here, need an IS passport, self-register here for an Irish Sailing passport. Anybody who wants to register themselves for a passport, they can do that by going here, and when they create their account, they'll be required to choose an organization, so choose a training center, and then effectively affiliate themselves with that training center. Now, if we log back into the Slumber Bay Training Center, and when we log back in, there's other ways that you can add people into the system. So we showed the self-register way. Now we can also click this plus icon. If I go back here, we're on the people page here. And if you click on the plus icon, you can add one person one by one here by entering their information. These 4 pieces of information are mandatory because it's the only way that we can differentiate a unique account in Checklick because of the fact that you can use the same email address for multiple accounts. So if a parent, for example, has multiple children, they can use the same email account, but they would be required to enter the other pieces of information here so that we can differentiate between those unique accounts. So that's one way you can add people here. There's another way here where we can add people via spreadsheet, and I'll show you how to do that. We'll go through that functionality. And the final way is if you want to use what we call Storefront, which is a payment and registration page. You can use this as an add-on feature where effectively you can create a page where your customers can go to and they can register through your page. And once they register through your page and pay, you can then, they're automatically filtered into your people page here. So an example of a page, a registration page is here. And you can see that effectively what your customers would do is they would enter their information here and register for whatever courses or other products that you have here. But the one that we wanted to focus on, because some of you may be uploading people into the system with a spreadsheet, is this one here. So we're going to click on the plus icon and go to add multiple people via spreadsheet. This takes us to a view that tells us a few things here. You'll notice that there's 4 pieces of mandatory information, as we mentioned, and then there's other pieces of information that are just standard on the page or default on the template that is created by Checklick. And you can enter some of this information. However, if you don't enter it, there's some information here on what gets chosen as the default. So for example, with usernames and passwords, if you leave them blank when you're uploading a spreadsheet, Checklick will tell you how it will assign those usernames and passwords. And not to worry if you don't have those usernames and passwords, because there's ways for the system and for you to be able to send out password reset instructions. And there's also a support channel where everyone can go to access how to change their password. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to download a spreadsheet template. And after I download this, so here's what the template looks like. And this is a blank one here, just to use as a reference. However, the one that I wanted to show you is one that I've prepared in advance, and that's this one here. So what I've done is I've created 6 people, or I'm going to be adding 6 people here with their email addresses, birth date, because we know those 4 pieces of information, these 4 columns here, are mandatory columns. However, everything else is optional. The one other thing that I'm going to be focusing on here is these columns here: evaluator, beginner sailing, intermediate sailing. If I go back to our template, you'll notice that there's something what's called tags here. And what tags are is a way to organize your database of people in the system, which makes it easier later on to choose groups of people and assign them to various groups. So you can communicate with them, or even just for organizational purposes, so that your instructors have a way to access various groups right off the bat. So if we go back to our template here, you'll notice that I created 2 columns here, one called beginner sailing, one called intermediate sailing. This is just the names that I've chosen for my tags. So in other words, these are the courses that I've chosen as tag names. And you'll notice that I've added a Y over here, and that means that I want to apply this beginner sailing tag to these people here that are in those appropriate rows. And likewise, I want to apply the intermediate sailing tag to the last 2 people, so to Richard and Riley here. And likewise, what I've also done is under evaluator here, so if I go back to evaluator, you can see here that if you set Y to the cell, so if you enter Y into that cell for the evaluator, that'll apply the evaluator tag to the people that you're uploading. And what that means is an evaluator is effectively an instructor who's then able to log into their own account and evaluate anybody who is added to your people database. So we'll go through how all that works. But for the sake of uploading this, so if we have a look at this spreadsheet, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually upload that spreadsheet. I'm not going to save any of the information here, but I'm going to go here and go to choose file, and I'll select my spreadsheet, click on open, click on import. So after we click import, you can see now we have our 6 people that we're uploading into the system. If there's anybody that is here on this list or that you're importing and Checklick recognizes that it perhaps could be a duplicate account, you'll be notified of that in this process. But for our purposes now, we know that there are 6 new people that we're adding into our database, but we can see that Checklick has identified all 6 of these as new accounts. So what we're going to do is just click on Add People. And for GDPR and for privacy policy reasons, this part here is something that you have to sign on when you are importing people. And you have to click this, I have obtained a record of implied consent, meaning that you have consent from these people to effectively evaluate them and to input them into Checklick, and also that you have consent that you have their email address and any personal information that you're adding into the system. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to sign off my name. Okay, and now that everybody's been imported, if I go back to the people page, you can see a few things here. First of all, we'll notice this green tag here that is telling us that Kevin O'Ryan has been added, but he's also been added as an evaluator. That's what this green tag is telling us. Further to that, you can see that there's this affiliated with. Affiliated with effectively just means that this person is visible in your database. And then this other tag here are tags that we have added, because if we go back to our spreadsheet, this spreadsheet here, we can see that there's various tags like beginner sailing over here that we applied to 3 people, and that is Jesse, Ronnie, and Jennifer. And that's what this is telling us here, that Jesse, Ronnie, and Jennifer, when I click on this beginner sailing tag, it's telling me that these people have been assigned that tag, and therefore I can now actually group them into that and access those 3 people more easily. Okay, so from here, what we're going to do is we're going to log in as Kevin, because if we go back into our people database of all people that we imported, we did import 6 people here, and Kevin happens to have this evaluator tag. So what I'm going to do is sign out, and I'm going to log in as Kevin, and his login credentials are like so. And now we've logged in as Kevin. First thing you'll notice that up top here, Kevin doesn't have the option as you do in the manager account to import people into the system or any of the other tabs here like Storefront or Insights. Really, he just has access to the 6 people here. So what I've done now is log back into the Slumber Bay Training Center as the manager. And what we're going to do is license the small boat sailing checklist from Irish Sailing. So to do that, we go to the checklist tab. I type in Irish Sailing. Okay, so here we go. And if I go down to Irish Sailing Small Boat Sailing Scheme, I'll click on Request License. All of the licensing terms will be laid out here, including if there's any price for it and whatever other terms are applicable to licensing it. So we'll click on Request License, and you can see that over here that it's telling me that the license has been requested. So what will happen now in the background, and what I will do is I will approve that license from Irish Sailing. And now once the license has been approved, you can see that over here to the right of everybody's name, you have the checklist for the Irish Sailing Boat Sailing Scheme and the various levels inside that particular checklist. So from here, what we're going to do is log in as Kevin as an evaluator so we can perform some of those instructor tasks. So I'm going to log out, log in as Kevin. And now that we're logged in, you can see that over to the right here, again, Kevin has access to all of the various checklists here, or sorry, just one of the checklists, but 4 different levels within that checklist. So what we're going to do now is we'll show you 2 things, is how to evaluate someone just individually and how to evaluate people in groups. So the first thing we're going to do is, let's say for example, we want to evaluate Riley over here. So we're going to go to the Irish Sailing Boat Scheme, and beside Riley's name here, we'll go to Taste of Sailing, and then I'm going to fill out some of the progress here. So I'll just say completed. You go up here. She's going to be on a dinghy, and then there's a few other things that we're going to check off here. Some of the skills that she's performed during the week. There's a few things that you can do here to save a little bit of time. One of them here is that you'll see under each one of the sections here, so this dinghy sailing techniques and maneuvers, for example, you can check all. And if I click on check all, it's going to tell you what check all means. It means that it's going to check off if there's any check boxes, and if there's any other sort of different types of skills here, different types of grading skills. It'll tell you what it'll assign to those skills if you do click on autocomplete. So if I click on autocomplete here, you can see that for that section it auto-completed everything here, and I'm going to save Taste of Sailing. Okay, so when I save Taste of Sailing, I can then go from here, I can click on this checklist here, and I wanted to show you what one of the checklists looks like when you actually fill it out. So this is the PDF version of that particular checklist, and if we scroll down a little bit, you can see that everything that we've ticked off is listed here. At the bottom, it'll tell you who it's being evaluated by. We're logged in as Kevin O'Ryan here, so you can see that that's who's been evaluating, and also the date of which the evaluation was performed on. So if I go back, so that was how you evaluate one person. One of the other things I should show you here is that there is a quick skill search. So for example, can explain, so I can just quick search here, and my search will be limited to whatever skill I'm looking for here. And then if I go back to the people page, and now we do a group evaluation. So for example, if I'm Kevin, and I am evaluating now all my beginner sailors. If I just click on the tag here to all my beginner sailors, actually let's go to the intermediate sailing class. So we're going to go to the intermediate sailing class where there's 2 people, and what I'm going to do is perform a group evaluation. So if I go over to the left here and look at group evaluation, I can click on here and go, I'm going to be evaluating only the Taste of Sailing for now, so I'll click on Taste of Sailing. And here's the first thing you'll notice. Up here, there is whoever you've selected. We've only selected 2 people, but if there's more people, they'll be listed all up top here. And I can flip through each one of their profiles. So for example, I can go to Richard's evaluation history, or I can go to Riley's and toggle between them, or if I want to evaluate or evaluate the same skill for everybody that I've selected. So for example here, if I want to evaluate Riley and Richard, so I'm going to click on select all, and what I'm going to do is go down further here, or actually I'm going to select dinghy for both Riley and Richard, and then also I'm going to select completed, or check all here, going to autocomplete as we did before, and then in addition what I'm going to do is fill out all of these as well. And after I do that, I'm going to go to save, and now I can download the checklist for both Riley and Richard. What I wanted to show you is if you want to now, for example, complete the level, so award a certificate, you can just change the status here and click on achieved. And once you click on achieved, it's actually going to ask you, do you want to auto-complete all of the skills in Taste of Sailing? We're not going to do that, so I'm going to click on don't auto-complete because we wanted to be a little bit more thorough and we went through each one of the actual skills. And after I do that, I'm going to go to save Taste of Sailing. Okay, and as soon as I do that now, if I refresh the page, and actually if I go back to the people page here, You can see that now under Richard, you can see that the Taste of Sailing has a full star here, and under Riley it has a full star as well. So if I wanted to now, for example, print a certificate for Riley, let's say, I would click on the Taste of Sailing certificate, and you see over here where we only had the checklist available for download, I can now download a certificate as well. And once I download the certificate, you can see that here's the certificate, here's the craft type, which is dinghy, and then likewise we've got a bunch of stuff here as well: Irish Sailing Small Boat, Taste of Sailing, and all of the details pertaining the evaluation and who evaluated it. So now if I go back to the people page, there's a few other things that I wanted to show you. So for example, when it comes to communication, if you want to send out an email to anybody that you evaluated. So for example, if at the end of the week you just wanted to send a quick update email, and let's say I was Kevin now and I wanted to send an email to Richard and Riley, just giving them an update, what I can do is I can select them here. So you can see that I've got both of them selected. I can use the quick select here and either select all or select none. If I select all, and then I go to compose email, you can see that it's telling me it's going to compose an email to 2 people. What I can do here is I can click on checklist for Taste of Sailing, and I can write something like, here's your progress for the week. Have a look at the attached document. So now when I send this email, both Richard and Riley are going to get separate emails with only the evaluation, the nice little PDF checklist that was performed on each one of them. So if I click on send, it's going to send an email, again, an individual email to whoever is selected here. A couple of other things I wanted to show you here is on the left-hand column is what we call the action menu. You can see there's a few options here. Down here under download, you can download what we call an attendance sheet. So what's nice here is if you wanted just to check off an in and out for the day, for example, you could do that. So you would use your filter functionality either by using the tags. So, I clicked on the intermediate sailing tag that brings up the 2 people that I have enrolled there. And then from there, once I click on the attendance sheet, I get exactly what you see here. What's nice about this is if you're using the storefront and you ask people various questions during that registration process, what you can do is you can actually ask various medical information or whatever other information is important to you for this contact sheet, and you can select an option where you can effectively have people fill out that information and for it to be available and viewable on this attendance sheet. And also the other thing here is you can also download the last updated checklist. So for example, if you have a big group of people, and you have 10 people that you want to download the checklist for or the last awarded certificate, you can do that by group as well. So you can load up your printer with some nice paper stock and you can download these as well and then print them from there. And that's it for the functionality for the instructor. And what we're going to do now is log into Riley's profile so that we can actually see the progress and what Riley will be able to see when she logs in, and likewise if she wants to fill out her logbook. So let's sign in as Riley. Okay, so now that we're signed in as Riley, you can see here that over here we have the Irish Small Boat Sailing Scheme checklist, and we see that any of the progress that has been performed or any of the progress that you can see on that checklist, Riley can now access by logging into her account. So if I click on the Taste of Sailing checklist, she can't fill any of this out, but she's able to download the certificate or the checklist, for example, and see any of the history. If she clicks on View History here, it'll actually tell her who performed the evaluation. So if there's something like comments here, where in any of the levels, if there's a comments section, she would be able to see exactly what those comments are and work on improving some of those skills. And what Riley can do from here as well is she can click on Logbook. And for the Irish Sailing Small Boat Sailing Scheme, you can see that there's a variety of templates here. So if I go into the racing logbook, for example, I can enter, all of the templates are here. So I can say multi-week. Okay, I'm just making a few things up here. International event. Should correct that. And we're not going to go through this whole thing, but I will save it, add to my entry logbook. And now you can see that down here it has been entered. And in fact, if I log back into Kevin's profile, he can then view the progress that Riley has made, or not the progress, but the entry that she has made for any of her logbook entries. So why don't we do that? I'll log back in as Kevin. Okay, and now that I'm logged back in as Kevin, if I look at Riley's profile here, you can see that there's a little logbook icon, and if I click on logbook, I can expand any of the logbook entries that she has made to verify them. Okay, and the one final thing here is if you are using the storefront, Riley, so if I log back into Riley's profile, she would be able to see any of her receipts if she's made any purchases through your payment and registration page. So it's all listed all under that one profile, included with any of the logbook entries and of course any of the progress for the Irish Sailing small boat scheme. So let's log back in as the training center manager. Okay, so now that we're logged back in as the manager, so when we click on the Insights tab, this is where you'll be able to view all of the evaluations performed, and this is what you're going to be billed on. So if you notice it says that there's 2 people here, what I can do is if I click on Unique Evaluatee Details, this is a report, a spreadsheet that will tell me exactly why these people are being deemed as participants and why they are under that particular count. You can see that, for here, we can see that Kevin O'Ryan that we were logged in under has performed evaluations on both Riley and Richard, so we can see that here. And this is just telling us, the certificate, the evaluating organization, and the evaluator here, and we can see some other details to the right here. If you want an even more detailed report, you can click on all evaluations, and this will give you a breakdown of each individual skill. So for example, for Riley here, you can see that if I go through each one of these lines, it's actually going to tell me each individual skill that was assessed. So, it'll tell me what skill was assessed here, the time of when that skill was assessed. So it's just really a detailed report of exactly what skills were achieved at what time. The more likely case scenario is that you'll be downloading this just to verify who you're actually being billed for. So that concludes our session here. And just as a final thing here, I did want to mention that we will be having a offer for all Irish Sailing Training Centers, and that offer is to build your registration and payment website. So this is a 250 euro value offer. But what this will give you is we would build out your payment and registration page at no cost. So the only cost there afterwards would be on any purchase transactions. And not to worry, we'll be sending out an email with the details here. But I just wanted to present this as an offer to everybody. And again, we'll send out the details for all of this. Finally, just as some resources here, if you wanted to check out our blog where we write about certain tips that you may want to or may be interested in from a training center perspective. And then we also have a whole library of articles, help articles that can be accessed here. And of course, if you're ever stuck and in trouble, you can always go to support@checklick.com. We answer all support inquiries, almost all of them actually within 24 hours, about 98% of them within 24 hours. So if you do ever need our help and are stuck, you can always go to support@checklick.com. And in fact, I'll quickly show you how you can access that. If you are in the Checklick app, you can just click down here and click on Help, and you can see that if you just type anything in here, you'll be able to view the article. So if I wanted to add people, you can just type it in and it'll give you all the options. If you're stuck and you're not satisfied with what you see in the article here and still need our help, you can always just click on Leave a Message and just write the details of what you're looking for. And again, we return all our inquiries within 24 hours generally. So thank you again for your time, and we'll be signing off for the evening now.